I'm Valentine Turkowitz, creator of the Talk to Walk deer call by the Complete Deer Calling System. I'm not going to waste too much of your time. I'm going to get right into this. What is this about? This is a simple call that allows you to imply the environmental sounds associated to the whitetail species. Here in PA, we have so many bow hunters that I think that's how they can decipher the difference between a hunter and the real deal. You know, as well as I do, you hit your grunt calls and you can get that buck to stop, but he just does not want to commit and come into you. So now, by applying the environmental sounds associated to the whitetail species, once you hit that grunt, get that buck to stop, you hit your call 3 or 4 times. Now he hears that buck moving. Boom. It completes your calling sequences and your calling sessions. So I'm going to get right into it. How it works is very simple. It's snap, release. Snap, release. Every time you snap once, it's one call. Every time you release, another call. Snap, release. Snap, release. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is probably the only call out there that you can go out and use from opening day archery season to the end of archery season. Why? Because it's a social call. It's not associated to the rut. Whitetails are very curious and they almost always move to the sound of their own species. Why? Because they hear whitetails in that area already. That's telling them that it's a safe area to approach, and it's an area they're used to being in as well. 2, they're so curious. They want to see whether deer are in the area. And 3, they're very competitive for food. I know you guys have seen a mature doe chase off other deer on a hot food source. A mature buck chase off other bucks on a hot food source as well. So that is probably why it is such an effective concept, and nobody's ever made a connection until now. But either way you want to use this, whether it's sight calling or blind calling. Sight calling early in the year or even during the rut, what I've found is the best way to use this and apply this is like a 4 or 5 step cadence. That's it. That is the most effective sequence that I have found that works the best for me. And as I teach it to other people all over the country, they're getting back to me on what a phenomenal concept this is. And is truly a means of enhancing your time in the woods without a doubt. So early in the season, you know, that 4 or 5 step cadence, stop, pause. Picture them deer when they're milling around your stand. You know, sometimes I see deer 45 minutes, half hour. It takes them that long to move past because they're grazing on whatever it is that they're feeding on, whether it's acorns, beech nuts, apples, what it may be. But you know, so early in the season, you see a couple does out there or a buck. You know, you want to try to draw him in. Just hit it 4 or 5 times. And I found that's what works best for me. Now, later on in the year, as I mentioned before, you know, you hit your grunt call and you can't get that buck to stop or come in. You get him to stop with your grunt, but you can't get him to commit. So now you hit your grunt, he stops, they're out 4 or 5 steps. One hand. Same thing, whether you use 2 hands or 1. And something else that I like to do, it's just like rattling. When you're blind calling, you know, you're trying to make something happen. Now you can do a buck chasing a doe with this call, and it sounds phenomenal in the woods. On a calm day, quiet day, early in the morning, you can do a buck chasing a doe. And it's similar to rattling. You know, sometimes a buck will come in, boom, right now. Sometimes it's a half hour, 45 minutes later, but you changed his direction, and he ended up coming past you because he heard it, and he came into it. There's so many different applications for this. That's why I call it the Complete Deer Calling System. That's the name of my company. The name of the call is the Talk to Walk call. The name of my company is the Complete Deer Calling Systems. Because it completes every call on the market. No matter what it is. Bleat, grunt, snort, wheeze, rattle bag. This is a squeeze bleed. Probably the number one application that guys make that link to is rattling, because we, you know, all the years that we've never had anything to apply the environmental sounds to rattling 20 feet up in the air. I have spoke with guys all over the country. They're tying strings, and I've done it, you know, bouncing their antlers on the ground to get that ground sound incorporated, the environmental sounds incorporated. But now on the rattle bag, when you're rattling, there's no wrong way of using this. But when you're doing that walk, because you got to remember, it's not just a call that I come up with, it's a technique as well, and what works best. It's the technique when you're, you know, you want to duplicate the sound of a whitetail walk. There is that technique at 1, 2, 3, 4. Snap, release, snap, release. So that is pretty much the how-to. Real quick, I want to say when, you know, you can sight call, you can blind call. I mean, all that is pretty much obvious. The one thing I don't want you guys to do, and I think this is probably one of the biggest mistakes guys do with all their calls in their calling sessions, is don't overcall from one stand. I mean, if you're doing that, you're calling the same deer in probably 4 or 5 times, and eventually they're not going to respond to it, as well as, you know, mixing your hunting areas up and going to 2 or 3 different locations when you have time to hunt, and applying this concept to you know, a group of different deer at every stand location. So try not to overuse it. The other thing is use hunter's intuition as far as distance. Don't let them get too close and hit the call. You know, treat it just like your grunt calls, your bleats. Don't, you know, there's a limit there on how close they can be. I found that the more cover you have around you, the more you can get away with as far as bringing them in closer. You know, the one buck I got, he was probably 35 yards out, and I couldn't get a shot on him, but I was in so much cover that it would allow me to use that call. Safe distance, I would say, is at least 40 yards and further. Anything closer than that, I wouldn't use it, but that's typically with all your calls. Where, like I said, in part of the wind, you got to have some cover around you. The more the better. I like hunting thicker stuff, so if you got to remember, if you're hunting in a standing timber, mature timber, where a whitetail can scan and see 60, 70, 80 yards, they're not going to come to it. They're not going to come to probably any call, you know, if that's the situation. But if you're on the edge of a standing hard timber and there's thicket behind you, or, you know, anything to break up that animal's vision, that there may be something on the other side of that obstruction. I mean, that's just the things you have to look for when you're putting your stands up. It could be a falling down tree. A lot of times when a tree falls down, the undergrowth sprouts up and it creates that little bit of a blind there. But you do have to have some cover around you in order to be successful with this. One more thing I want to do with you guys is, not only are you getting a new call and learning a new means of a new technique to apply to your calling sessions, I want to show you you're getting a durable product as well. So you can take this, crunch it up, fluff it up, ready to go. Every seam is triple welded. I went with welding as opposed to threaded, because it's not a garment that you wear. You're going to be tugging on it, you're going to be pulling on it, you're going to be using it, it's going to be rained on, snowed on. But it's definitely a great product. Fluff it up. It's there. And then one of the things that happened, and I didn't plan on this, is you want it to be exposed to the elements. This is a bucket of water. Leave it out in the rain, because it will get quieter, and probably not as wet as this, but This doesn't sound like wet leaves. I don't know what else you can do to get that close. And then as it dries out, it comes right back to its original form. The other thing is when it's cold out, it gets louder. It's just a natural reaction with the material inside with the cold weather, just like crisp fall leaves, you know, with a layer of frost on them. It gets louder as it gets colder. So you want it to be exposed to the elements. Just something that naturally happened. I didn't plan on it, but you know, after doing testing and using it out in the elements, I found, you know, that it gets louder in colder weather and quieter in heavy rain. I mean, I don't know too many guys that hunt and pouring down rain. Get it this wet, it'd have to be, I mean, it's pretty saturated, but it dries out, it comes right back to its natural form again. Like I said, you're getting a superior product, plus you're getting a new call and learning a new calling technique.